Let me know if I am audible.
Yes, Prabhu, you are audible and we can see your screen.
Fine. So we will start with verse number 39. Radhapat Pankaj Prabhu ended at 38, and a very nice summary on Yudhishthir Maharaj was actually feeling very depressed after he saw that people have left, and a very good quality that Radhapat Pankaj Prabhu said, he was compassionate to all of them. So we'll continue from verse number 39. So let's start on 39. Yudhishthir uvacha naham veda gatim pitror naham veda gatim pitror akwan kwa gatava iha amba vahata putrartha kva gatacha tapasvini. Translation. Yudhishthir Maharaj said, O godly personality, I do not know where my two uncles have gone, nor can I find my ascetic aunt who is grief-stricken by the loss of all her sons.
Sorry, Prabhu,
Okay.
you're talking.
Yes.
Should I read, Prabhu?
Yeah, please go ahead and read the purport.
Maharaj Yudhishthir, as a good soul and a devotee of the Lord, was always conscious of the great loss of his aunt and her sufferings as an ascetic. An ascetic is never disturbed by all kinds of sufferings, and that makes him strong and determined on the path of spiritual progress. Queen Gandhari is a typical example of an ascetic because of her marvelous character in many trying situations. She was an ideal woman as mother, wife, and ascetic. And in the history of the world, such character in a woman is rarely found.
Correct. Hare Krishna. So Yudhishthir Maharaj is trying to find out, and he's seeing that his aunt is not there. And there's a description that Prabhupada nicely write about Queen Gandhari. So as we read the purports, I'll just going to share my screen and we'll go through some of the verses on this. So 39, there are three good reasons where Prabhupada is talking about Gandhari. The first is Gandhari was voluntarily involved into, you all know that she closed her eyes because the moment she found that, her husband is blind. So she took a vow that she will also close her eyes and follow her husband. So this was one of the reasons that Gandhari is called a very powerful ascetic. The next reason here is, besides the shock that she suffered, it's also mentioned that her 100 sons were also killed during the battlefield. So this is the second reason Gandhari is mentioned so powerful. And the third reason that is mentioned is obviously that you all know that when Dhritarashtra left the material world, Gandhari followed her husband wherever he went. So these are the three core reasons where we see that Gandhari is a very powerful and chaste wife, that she followed her husband. She was very much there when her sons were killed, and then at the last she followed the footsteps of Dhritarashtra when he left the material world. So these are three reasons where the greatness of Gandhari is mentioned And this is what Prabhupada is trying to say in the purport. So let's go to the next verse now, which is 40. Karnadhara iva pare bhagwan paradarshakaha atha babhashe bhagwan narado muni sattamaha. Can anyone read the translation and purport?
Sure, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Translation. You are like a captain of a ship in a great ocean, and you can direct us to our destination. Thus address the godly personality, Devarishi Narada, greatest of the philosopher devotees, began to speak. Purport. There are different types of philosophers, and the greatest of all of them are those who have seen the personality of Godhead and have surrendered themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Among all such pure devotees of the Lord, Devarishi Narada is the chief, and therefore he has been described herein as the greatest of all philosopher devotees. Unless one has become a sufficiently learned philosopher by hearing Vedanta philosophy from a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot be a learned philosopher devotee. One must be very faithful, learned, and renounced, otherwise one cannot be a pure devotee. A pure devotee of the Lord can give us direction towards the other end of nescience. Devarshi Narada used to visit the palace of Maharaja Yudhishthira because the Pandavas were all pure devotees of the Lord, and the Devarishi was always ready to give them good counsel whenever needed. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah. So quite interesting points here to note. It was Narad Muni now who appeared. So moment Yudhishthir Maharaj saw that these people are not there, and Yudhishthir Maharaj was really perplexed. And at that moment is when Narad Muni appeared there. So this is one of the very good instructions that Narad Muni is going to give to Yudhishthir Maharaj, seeing that he's quite disappointed and feeling compassionate about the aunt and Dhritarashtra leaving the palace. So he was worried on where he will stay, what they will do and stuff. So Narad Muni has appeared now, and he's instructing them on various instructions. So all 41, 42, 43 are similar verses. They have quite common points in these three. But here it is described that only a pure devotee of the Lord is the one who can give you the actual knowledge. And let's see Narad Muni now on how he has achieved that place, as Prabhupada is mentioning, that a pure devotee of the Lord, unless you have received the transcendental knowledge, you are not in a position to deliver a message or convince the devotee. So here is Narad Muni. It says that only great souls come for a great cause. So we will look at some of the very beautiful verses that are in Srimad Bhagavatam that are mentioned in the first canto, 5th chapter. So let's look at some of the characteristics on why Narad Muni is at that position. So the first verse is about self-discipline. So Narad Muni, when he was a small child, there were few rishis or sages that he served with his mother. So one of the verses talks about how he was self-disciplined. And in 1.5.24, it is said, although they were impartial by nature, those followers of the Vedanta blessed me. So these are all the sages whom Narad Muni served. So it says that those followers of the Vedanta blessed me with their causeless mercy. As far as I was concerned, I was self-controlled and I had no attachment to sports, even though I was a boy. In addition, I was not naughty and I did not speak more than required. So this is a very good characteristics that Narad Muni had as self-discipline. Although he was a small child, he was self-controlled. He did not have attachments as other small kids had. And then, of course, he was not naughty. And then he did not speak more than required. So one of the very good qualities of Narad Muni was that he was very much self-disciplined. Next is the second verse, which is 529. It says he was always attached to that saintly persons. So here it says two qualities attached to the saintly persons, and he faithfully followed the instructions of the pure devotees. So I will read it. I was very much attached to those sages. I was gentle in behavior, and my sins were eradicated in their service. Very beautiful point. In my heart, I had strong faith in them. I had subjected the senses, and I was strictly following them with body and mind. So two beautiful characteristics and mentioned in that shloka of 1529, that he was always attracted or attached to the saintly persons. And by serving the saintly people, it is said that all his sins were eradicated. And then at the last, it is said that he was faithfully following the instructions of the pure devotee. So he did surrender, and it is said that he strictly followed them with the body and the mind. So this is one of the other two characteristics on Narad Muni, on how did he reach to that place. The third one is Narad Muni. Finally, it is said in 1539 that Narad Muni attained transcendental loving service. Let's read, and it shows you all these steps that are there. So, O Brahmana, thus by the Supreme Lord Krishna, I was endowed first with the transcendental knowledge of the Lord as inculcated in the confidential parts of the Vedas first, then with the spiritual opulences, and then with the spiritual opulences, and then with his intimate loving service. So Prabhupada clearly writes in that purport of 11340 is that unless you know the Vedas, unless you know the Lord, it is not possible for you to give such kind of an instruction. So here in 1539, it clearly says that Narad Muni first achieved, he went through all the Vedas, and then he did all the service towards the Lord. And then he was only able to achieve the transcendental loving service. So this clearly says that Narad Muni went through all of this, and at the last he was able to achieve what Narad Muni is right now. So he is one of the greatest devotees of the Lord. He can travel across any space and time throughout all the universes, be it upper universes or lower planetary systems. He can transcend them at any given point of time. So this was one of the reasons that great souls come for a great cause. But Prabhupada clearly writes that he was one of the people who received a transcendental loving service towards Lord Krishna. And the second reason here Prabhupada mentions is a pure devotee of the Lord can give us the direction. So only a pure devotee is one who can give us a direction. Otherwise, it's very difficult on our own to get that direction. Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter clearly mentions ye tatha mam prapadyante tam tathem bhajamyaham. So here Krishna, it is clearly written in the 4th chapter that as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respect, O son of Pratha. So Krishna reciprocates to each individual, and this is based on the amount of surrender or amount of bhakti that you do towards the Lord. So here it is said that Narad Muni, being pure devotee of the Lord, is giving the direction. And the reason for this was that Pandavas were all pure devotees of the Lord. So here, even the devotee of the Lord, a pure devotee like Narada, is coming to help the devotees of the Lord. So it's not Krishna who is giving them instructions, but because they are pure devotees of the Lord, great souls like Narad Muni are coming to give them the right direction. So it is said Pandavas were all pure devotees of the Lord, and Devarshi was always ready to give them good counsel whenever needed. So a pure devotee can give us a direction, and here Narad Muni is appearing in the assembly to guide Maharaj Yudhishthir on how you should behave and what is exactly happening. So now the verse 41, 42, 43 will typically tell them on what exactly is happening. Okay. So let's read now the verse number 41. Sorry for the connection, but I think it's a bit slow. Okay, so this is 41. So here it says, Narad Uvacha Ma Kanchana Shucho Rajan Yadishva Shwarvansha Jagata Lokaha Sapala Yasyame Vahanti Balimi Shituhu Samyut Nakti Bhutani Sa Evan Viyun Nakticha. Can anyone read this? Translation and purport.
Fine, Prabhuji, I'll read. Hare Krishna. Translation. Sri Narada said, O pious king, do not lament for anyone, for everyone is under the control of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, all living beings and their leaders carry on worship to be well protected. It is He only who brings them together and disperses them. Purport. Every living being, either in this material world or in the spiritual world, is under the control of the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. Beginning from Brahmaji, the leader of this universe, down to the insignificant ant, all are abiding by the order of the Supreme Lord. Thus, the constitutional position of the living being is subordination under the control of the Lord. The foolish living being, especially man, artificially rebels against the law of the Supreme and thus becomes chastised as an asura or lawbreaker. A living being is placed in a particular position by the order of the Supreme Lord and is again shifted from that place by the order of the Supreme Lord or his authorized agents. Brahma, Shiva, Indra, Maharaja Yudhishthira, or in modern history, Napoleon, Akbar, Alexander, Gandhi, Subhash, and Nehru, all the servants of the Lord, and they are placed in and removed from their respective positions by the supreme will of the Lord. None of them is independent. Even though such men or leaders rebel so as not to recognize the supremacy of the Lord, they are put under still more rigorous laws of the material world by different miseries. Only the foolish man therefore says that there is no God.
Yeah.
Maharaja Yudhishthira was being convinced of this naked truth because he was greatly overwhelmed by the sudden departure of his old uncles and aunt. Maharaja Dhritarashtra was placed in that position according to his past deeds. He had already suffered or enjoyed the benefits accrued to him in the past. But due to his good luck somehow or other, he had a good younger brother Vidura, and by his instruction, he left to achieve salvation by closing all accounts in the material world.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, one cannot change the course of one's due happiness and distress by plan. Everyone has to accept them as they come under the subtle arrangement of Kala or invincible time. There is no use trying to counteract them. The best thing is, therefore, that one should endeavor to achieve salvation, and this prerogative is given only to man because of his developed condition of mental activities and intelligence. Only for man are there different Vedic instructions for attainment of salvation during the human form of existence. One who misuses this opportunity of advanced intelligence is verily condemned and put into different types of miseries, either in this present life or in the future. That is the way of Supreme controls everyone. Jai Shri Ram.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very nicely, Prabhupada writes here, and Narad Muni is instructing that everyone is under the control of Supreme Lord, and be it in the material world or spiritual world. So Prabhupada writes, Brahmaji, or even insignificant ant, is abiding to the orders of the Lord. Okay. Now, what we see here is Dhritarashtra is somehow unable to understand his position, right? When Vidura came and started explaining things to Dhritarashtra, he was not actually, till that point, he was not, he did not knew actually, at what stage should I give up my life. So let's see some of the other slides that we have here to see what was happening. Now, Dhritarashtra, as we said before, he left. He was all perplexed on what is happening. So there are various stages of giving up control in life, and Dhritarashtra really at that point did not understand. So in our spiritual journey also, the same is with us also. We start thinking first that I'm in control. Everything that I'm doing is all under my control. But slowly we realize at one stage that I'm not in this control. There's something that is beyond me. And then later on, we also realize that, oh, it's not me, but someone else is controlling the full situation. We don't know who that yet is, but we still feel that someone else is controlling the situation. And then later, we also find that, yes, someone else is controlling, but whatever is there, it is happening for the betterment. Okay. And then later we realize that, oh, it is the Lord who is actually controlling everything that is happening around us. And then finally we realize that the Lord is in loving control, and out of his love for us, he controls us, and only for a reason that he wants us to be taken back to Godhead. So till the point where Vidura came and explained Dhritarashtra everything, he did not understand on what is happening. He did not want to give up at any given stage. They lost the battlefield. He lost his sons, and still Dhritarashtra is at that same place wanting to rule. So this is our situation also, where in our life we really don't understand what is happening, but this is the realization that happens, that ultimately it is the Lord who is controlling everything, and it is only because of his love he wants us to come back to Godhead. Okay. Now, Dhritarashtra was not at that stage to understand any of this till the point Vidura started explaining. And Vidura actually made Dhritarashtra realize that you are not in control. Only time is, and this is what Prabhupada mentions in the purport, that only Kala is the one, or time, inconceivable time is in control. So you do not have any control whatsoever with you. And time is manifesting in the form of death, old age, and disease. So this is what was instructed or told to Dhritarashtra by Vidura. And Prabhupada also writes that the situation that is mentioned in this purport, saying that the Lord places you in a particular position, it is clearly mentioned that no one can change the course of one's due happiness and distress. And it is said that Maharaj Dhritarashtra was placed in that position according to his past deeds. And once you are in that situation, and this is what Prabhupada writes, that if you are into that space where everything is arranged by Kala or inconceivable time, you have to accept whatever happiness or distress that comes under. So this is what was also happening with Maharaj Yudhishthir, that he was getting distressed, he was unhappy about the situation, but you have to accept it because that was the arrangement that was done by Kal or inconvincible time. And Prabhupada writes in this purport also is that Kala or time is the one that brings about a change. So Prabhupada writes that everyone is placed in a particular position, leaving them with a certain duration and then removed by the Lord. And then once you are in that situation where you are placed in that situation and you are there for some time, there are two paths that Prabhupada writes in this purport, that if you are in that situation, first way is through the Vedic instructions you achieve salvation. So one way is, yes, I have distress or I have happiness or I am pushed in a particular situation by Kal or inconvincible time. One way to get out of it is utilize your time to achieve salvation. That means follow the Vedic instructions as what is written, and you will be able to come out of that situation nicely. The other thing is, if you do not do that, then you become a lawbreaker and go against the Lord's will and will occur suffering. So there would be sufferings that would be caused if you don't follow the Lord's will. So whatever is happening right now is because of the will of the Lord. This is what Prabhupada is writing in this purport. And the only way to get out of it is follow the Vedic instructions. If you do not do so, then you are breaking the Lord's sort of system or will, and you are bound to get sufferings in this. So here it is said, Kala or time is the one that brings in change. So be in that position, follow Vedic instructions, and you will be happily able to come out of that situation wherever the Lord has placed you. Okay. And the most important part that Prabhupada writes at first statement is everyone is under the control of the Lord. So beautiful 3 verses that talks about the Supreme Lord. First one is on Bhagavad Gita 10:8. It says, Aham sarvasya prabhaho mattah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajanti mam buddha bhava samandita. So the Lord says, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So here, whether you are put in a situation at a spiritual level or at the material level, the Lord says He controls everything, right? And this is a very good shloka that is there in chapter number 10. Chapter number 7.6 also says, Etad yonini bhutani sarvani, Etad yonini sarvani, Etad yonini bhutani sarvanityu paradhaya. So it says, Aham kritsnasya jagatah prabhava pralayas. So it says all created beings have their sources in these two natures. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual is this world. Know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. So Lord is the source and everything is controlled by the Lord. And then 9:10 it says, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetu nanena konteya jagatvi parivartate. So it says this material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction. O son of Kunti, producing all moving or non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So Prabhupada clearly writes everything is under the control, be it any spiritual world or material world, or be it Kala or time, which is another form, another energy of the Lord, be it you are placed in the spiritual or the material situations, or be it a material nature, Lord clearly says, I am the controller. So here Prabhupada says that don't worry about it. Everything that is happening right now is under my control. So we need to understand whatever situation we are in, it is the Lord's will first, and everything is controlled by the Supreme Lord. And we will see in the next shlokas what Narad Muni is trying to say, when he says you are under my control, and situations where people are coming together and getting separated is what is explained in the next verse, and that too with the will of the Lord. Okay, let's go to the next verse now, which is 42. Okay, 42 says, Yatha gavo nasi protas, Yatha gavo nasi protas, Tantyam badhascha damabhihi, Vaktanyamna vakya vakyatanyaya namabhir badha vahanti balimi shituha. Can someone read the translation?
As a
I'll
cow
read.
bound through the nose of a long rope is conditioned, so also human beings are bound by different Vedic injunctions and are conditioned to obey the orders of the Supreme. Every living being, whether a man or an animal or a bird, thinks that he is free by himself, but actually no one is free from the severe laws of the Lord. The laws of the Lord are severe because they cannot be disobeyed in any circumstances. The man made laws may be evaded by cunning outlaws, but in the courts of supreme lawmaker, there is in the courts of the supreme lawmaker, there is not the slightest possibility of neglecting the laws. A slight change from the course of the God made law can bring about a massive danger to be faced by the lawbreaker. Such laws of the Supreme are generally known as the codes of religion under different conditions. But the principle of religion everywhere is one and the same, namely to obey the orders of the Supreme God, the codes of religion. That is the condition of material existence. Sorry. All living beings in the material world have taken up the risk of conditioned life by their own selection and are thus entrapped by the laws of the material nature. The only way to get out of the entanglement is to agree to obey to the Supreme. But instead of becoming free from the clutches of the Maya or illusion, foolish human beings become bound up by different nomenclatures, being designated as Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, Hindus, Mohammedans, Indians, Europeans, Americans, Chinese, and many others, and thus they carry out the orders of the Supreme Lord under the influence of respective scriptural or legislative injunctions. The statutory laws of the state are imperfect imitation replicas of religious codes. The secular state or the godless state allows the citizen to break the laws of the god but restricts them from disobeying the laws of the state. The result is that the people in general suffer more by breaking the laws of the god than by obeying the imperfect laws made by the man. Every man is imperfect by constitution and the conditions of material existence, and there is not the least possibility that even the most materially advanced man can enact perfect legislation. On the other hand, there is no such imperfection in the laws of the God. If leaders are educated in the laws of the God, there is no necessity of a makeshift legislative council or aimless men. There is necessity of change in the makeshift laws of the man, but there is no change in the God made laws because they are made perfect by all perfect personality of the Godhead. The codes of religion, scriptural injections, and are made by liberated representatives of God in conciliation of different conditions of living. And by carrying out the orders of the Lord, the conditioned living beings gradually become free from the clutches of the material existence. The factual position of the living being is, however, that he is the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. In the liberated state, he renders service to the Lord in transcendental love and thus enjoys a life of full freedom, even sometimes at an equal level with the Lord or sometimes more than the Lord. But in the conditioned material world, even living being wants to be the Lord of the other living beings and thus by the illusion of Maya, this mentality of lording it over becomes a cause of further extension of conditional life. So, in the material world, the living being is still more conditioned until he surrenders unto the Lord by reviewing his original state of eternal servitorship. This is the last injection of the Bhagavad Gita and all other recognized scriptures of the world. Hare Krishna.
Excellent. Thank you. Excellent purport. Okay, so Prabhupada writes a very nice example. The shloka says that a cow bound through a nose by a long rope is conditioned. So here it means that the cow is in a complete control when through that rope which passes through the nose. So she is not independent. Okay, she has to obey the person who is actually guiding the cow through moving that rope. And Prabhupada here clearly writes that there are two laws that are there: a man-made law and the law that is made by God. So God-made law. And Prabhupada down the line talks about all different kinds of differentiation on man-made laws and God-made laws. We'll look at the other details now on this. So this is 42 verse, and there was a nice conversation that Prabhupada was discussing the same in one of the lectures in US Atlanta in 1975, and I'll read it. It's on the same line. So this says that religious principles cannot be manufactured, and this was a conversation between an Indian man and Prabhupada happening in a room in Atlanta. And Prabhupada was saying that religious principles cannot be manufactured by anyone within the universe. They are codes of laws given by the Lord, and that is a religion. So Prabhupada clearly says that religion is nothing but the code or the laws that are given by the Lord. And then he says, Prabhupada says, that means we have to know who God is, what is his desire, and we have to abide by that, and that is religion. So Prabhupada says the real definition is just to know who the Lord is, what is his desire, and we have to follow him. Whatever situation he puts us under, we need to abide to that situation. So previous shloka talked about that situation, that we are put into certain situations. So Prabhupada says, no, it's a law that the Lord has created, and you need to abide to that. And Prabhupada gives an example. Just like a good citizen, he knows that the government and the government's laws, and he abides by it, then he is a good citizen. Otherwise, he's a criminal. So if he does not abide by the laws of the state, he's a criminal. So Prabhupada is also given the same example as also mentioned in the purport here in the translation. Prabhupada writes, you need to abide to that law that is created. So Prabhupada says, if you violate any government laws, then you are a criminal. Similarly, if at the platform where we are, if we do not obey the God's will or God's law, then we also become criminal and we are subject to the sufferings as we saw in the earlier slide. So here also says, similarly, if one does not abide by the orders or the codes of the God, then Prabhupada says he's a demon. Okay. And Prabhupada was mentioning to this guy who was speaking, Prabhupada said, everyone is godless mostly, and therefore there are problems, chaotic situations. Nobody is abiding by the supreme law. Everyone is creating his own law, and that's the trouble. So Prabhupada also mentioned in the same translation also that there are problems, there are situations that are created, and they are only created because no one follows the law that is created by the Lord. And if you don't follow those laws, then everyone is in a chaotic situation and everyone is in trouble. Okay. One shloka which is in Srimad Bhagavatam 5:18-12, where Prabhupada writes that this is the same shloka but split into 4 lines. Prabhupada says, anyone who is disobedient to the Lord, he cannot have any good qualifications. I'll read the purport here. All the demigods and their exalted qualities, such as religion, knowledge, and renunciation, become manifest in the body of one who has developed unalloyed devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vasudeva. So Prabhupada is clearly writing that if you are following the laws of the Lord that are created, then you will have who is not following, anyone who is disobedient to the Lord, he cannot have good qualifications. And on the other side, he says, whereas one who is a devotee abiding by the orders of the Lord, he has got all good qualifications of the God. And here Prabhupada writes, on the other hand, a person devoid of devotional service, it's just interchange these sentences. Sorry for that. So on the other hand, a person devoid of devotional service and engaged in the material activities has no good qualities, even if he is adept at the practice of mystic yoga or honest endeavor of maintaining his family and relatives. He must be driven by his own mental speculation and must engage in the service of Lord's external energy. How can there be any good qualities in such a man? So this should go up. So here Prabhupada is clearly writing that a devotee has all the good qualities if he abides to the orders of the Lord. And if he does not abide to the orders of the Lord, then he does not have good qualities. And Prabhupada mentions that he will then engage in the service of Lord's external energy, which is Maya. So he will get involved in all the different kind of miseries that are there. And then definitely if he is into that situation, he does not have a good qualification. So Prabhupada is clearly mentioning on two things. One is a God-made law and a man-made law. So God-made laws cannot have flaws. They are flawless. God-made laws do not change from time to time. We'll see some of the examples. And then God-made laws control everyone. No one can escape. So if there is a law that has been made by the Lord, there is no escape from this. Even if you try to escape, then you are breaking the law and then you are going into the miseries as mentioned. And very interestingly, a devotee of the Lord naturally agrees that the Lord is under the control. So we saw those slides initially, right, where we saw, oh, I'm the controller. But then later on, when we go into our spiritual path, we later on realize that there is not a single control that we have. Everything that happens is happening because of the Lord. And devotee naturally agrees that everything is under the control of the Lord. Wherein Prabhupada writes that man-made laws can have flaws. Man-made laws changes based on time and circumstances. Man-made laws can be easily escaped by cheating. So you can do some kind of a cheating and then you can go away with the man-made laws, but this is not the same as in the God-made laws here. And here it is said that the non-devotees, non-devotees do not agree, but they agree, Prabhupada says, at the time of the death, as it is proven, and in 1041 it says, Mrityur Sarva Haraschaham. So when death comes, they automatically agree to it, okay? But otherwise they do not. So looking at the example, so let's take the man-made laws here. Very interestingly, you must have all seen that, for example, US government has laws which says a teacher is not allowed to raise their hands on the kids, right, in the school. So the whole purpose that law was made was for something called a child protection. But then what happened with this child protection law was that the children started abusing that law. And later on, it was found that people or children, they are complaining. So they are allowed to even call the police if something like this happens, that, a teacher is troubling a student, you are allowed to call the police. And then later on, they found that, they are troubling their parents. So the law that was made did not work out, and that needs a change based on time and circumstances, right? Similarly, another example that we see is in the US, you are allowed to carry guns now, right? Because again, the law was made for the protection. And what did people do? People take those guns and start shooting it everywhere. So there are a lot of flaws that are there, which are made by man. There are escapes, there are cheatings that you can do, but here there are nothing. So when you say God-made laws, they don't change. For example, if the Lord says that I'm not this body and soul, is that situation changing? No. Or when the Lord says that the soul cannot be destroyed, right? or when the Lord says the soul transmigrates from one body to the other body. These are all the laws that are the same. They do not change. They are constant, and there are no flaws when the Lord has made all these laws. Wherein if you look at the man-made laws, they have a lot of flaws, and then they change based on time and circumstances. But this is not the situation when the Lord does anything. Okay. Let's move to purport number 30. So at the last year, it is very nicely explained that let's read. So here it says that the factual position of the living being is, however, that he is eternal savior of the Supreme Lord. In his liberated state, he renders service to the Lord in the transcendental service, thus enjoying full freedom, even sometimes on equal level with the Lord, or sometimes more than the Lord. But in the conditioned material world, every living being wants to lord over the other living beings, and thus is illusioned by the Maya. This mentality of lording it over becomes a further cause of further extension of conditioned life. So in the material world, the living being is still more conditioned until he surrenders onto the Lord. So again, if you are going after the man-made laws, this is the situation where you will fall in. But if you have to come out of that law, then you have to follow the Lord's rules, and then you will not be able to do that. So here it says, until he surrenders onto the Lord by reviving his original state of eternal saviorship. Unless you surrender and serve the Lord, there is no way coming out of the clutches of Maya, as mentioned here. So either you serve Maya or you serve Lord. That are the only two options that you have. So better is to serve the Lord and come out of this situation. And this is the last instruction of Bhagavad Gita and all recognized scriptures of the world. Okay. Let's go to 43 now. Okay. So 43 says, Yatha kridopa paraska Yatha krido paska ranam samyoga vigama viha ichya kriditu yasyatam tathaive chayandranam. Translation. Can someone read it?
I'll read it. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. As a player sets up and disperses his playthings according to his own sweet will, so the supreme will of the Lord brings men together and separates them. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. We must know for certain that the particular position in which we are now set up is an arrangement of the Supreme Will in terms of our own acts in the past. The Supreme Lord is present as the localized Paramatma in the heart of every living being. As it is said in the Bhagavad Gita 13.23, and therefore he knows everything of our activities in every stage of our lives. He rewards the reactions of our actions by placing us in some particular place. A rich man gets his son born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but the child who comes as the rich man's son deserved such a place, and therefore he is placed there by the will of the Lord. And at a particular moment, when the child has to be removed from that place, he is also carried by the will of the Supreme. Even if the child or the father does not wish to be separated from the happy relation, the same thing happens in the case of a poor man also. Neither rich man nor poor man has any control over such meetings or separations of living beings. The example of a player and his playthings should not be misunderstood. One may argue that since the Lord is bound to award the reactionary results of one's own actions. The examples of a player cannot be applied, but it is not so. We must always remember that the Lord is the supreme will. Lord is the supreme will, and he is not bound by any law. Generally, the law of karma is that one is awarded the result of one's own actions. But in special cases, by the will of the Lord, such resultant actions are changed also. But this change can be effected by the will of the Lord only, and no other. Therefore, the example of the players cited in the verses is quite appropriate. For the supreme will is absolutely free to do whatever he likes, and because he is all perfect, there is no mistake in any of the actions or reactions. These changes of resultant actions are especially rendered by the Lord when a pure devotee is involved. It is assured in the Bhagavad Gita 9.30.31 that the Lord saves a pure devotee who has surrendered unto him without reservations from all sorts of reactions of sins. And there is no doubt about this. There are hundreds of examples of reactions changed by the Lord in the history of the world. If the Lord is able to change the reactions of one's past deeds, then certainly he is not himself bound by any actions or reactions of his own deeds. He is perfect and transcendental in all laws. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. So again, very beautifully Prabhupada explains that everything that is happening with the will of the Lord. So all these setups that are happening, people come, people go out, people are removed, people are put into certain situations, is all because of the will of the Lord. So let's see, what do we have here now? So here, this is Child's Play of God. This is 43. So we all know the Dhritarashtra, Gandhari and Vidura left the palace. Yudhishthira Maharaj was feeling guilty that it was because of him that they all left. Narad Muni came and addressed Yudhishthira Maharaj and enlightened them. So here, Prabhupada gives an example: a child playing with a toy wishes to play as he wishes, brings them together and separates them as he wishes. So Prabhupada is saying a child playing with the toys is that once a child is playing with his toys, he will bring these toys together, play with them, and then again disperse them or separate them. And similarly, it is the will of the Lord, of the Supreme, based on the activities that they have done. They assemble at one place for some time and get separated. So this is the will of the Lord based on our actions or whatever activities we have done. You will find that there are two people that are coming at one place, meeting, and then they get separated. So Canto 6 very beautifully describes an example, and this is where it says the relation between the people. So here it says if a person walks on a sandy beach, certain sand particles may get attached to the person's foot. And when the person travels from one location to the other, the particle is moved from one location to the other. These sand particles cannot stay together due to the action of the wind or water. Similarly, individuals in particular relationship come together and then part ways. So this is the relationship. Anytime we see that there are people coming together or they are getting separated out, this is very nicely explained in sixth canto that sand particles are the same. Someone is walking, it gets stuck in the person's foot, and the two sand particles get separated. And this can happen by walking, or it can be due to the wind and water as well. Okay, the other example also as a relation between the people is you may have friends in your childhood, which are your childhood friends with your classes. Now you may not even remember their name. You must have studied with them in the classes, in the college. You were there together with them, but now you are dispersed and you all are at different places. Okay. Similarly, 10th Canto also describes the relationship between the people. It says, put some twig of leaves on the flowing water river. Because of the flow of the leaves, the twig may stay together, or because of the same flow, they may get separated permanently and never to meet again. So here is again in 10th Canto also it is saying that the relationship between the people is like this. Because of your actions, you come together and then you may get parted again. And this is what typically Narad Muni is also trying to explain them that, this is your situation, that you came in together and now people are separated, so you really don't have to worry. So this is what it is. Relationship between the two people is like the two objects flowing in the river. They may come together and get separated. And then here it says waves of time will separate people and bring them together. People will experience certain reactions to their own activities performed. So to experience those reactions, they may come in contact with certain people for some time, and at some places and get separated. So people will experience this, and this experience, what they will have is only based on their own activities. So if two people are supposed to share happiness, they will come together. If there are people who, based on their actions, also will share some distress or some problems, they will come together. So they will stay for some time and they will get separated if based on their karmas. Okay. What we need to remember is, with the relationships that we have with people, we need to always think that we have a permanent relation with the Lord. Although the relations with our kins, our family member is temporary, what we need to remember is that we always have a permanent relationship with the Lord, and that relationship is not going to change. Okay. So Bhagavad Gita in 14.4, it says, Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtaya sambhavantiya tasam brahma mahad yonir aham bija pradapita. So it says, it should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and I am the seed-giving father. So the relationships that we have with the Lord is at the permanent level. That means we have a permanent relationship with the Lord. Other also shloka, which is 15.7, talks about the same. Mama evamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manha shasthani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. It says the living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, including the mind. So here also it shows that the Lord is saying they are my part and parcel. So we have a permanent relationship with the Lord. And also to remember is that there is a temporary relationship with the others, but we also have a spiritual platform where we have a common relationship. So today we may have relationship with different people, but at the spiritual platform, we are one. So 4.35 clearly talks about that. It says, having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge, you will see that all living entities are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, they are mind. So here it is clearly stating that we may have a temporary relationship with the others, but at a spiritual platform, we are still linked with the other. And that relationship is because the living entities and part and parcel of the Lord. So there is a temporary relationship, there is a permanent relationship with the Lord. Permanent relationship will always stay. Temporary relationship, yes, will go and come back, but at a spiritual platform, we are still one, and the purpose is that we all are part and parcels of the Supreme. Okay. So this is, yes.
So one question. Prabhu, 2 or 3 slides back, you had mentioned about the waves of the ocean, they disperse and bring the family people together, right? I
Yeah.
remember reading this somewhere in the 13th chapter, first canto. But which verse exactly is this?
I will find out, Prabhu. I also noted down this, but I did not note the verse, I will find out this verse where this is, huh? I'll let you know where this is mentioned, okay?
I remember Narad Muni mentioning this to Yudhishthir Maharaj, but somehow
Yeah.
I lost track of that verse.
No,
Whenever
I also, when I wrote, I just roughly mentioned the canto. I did not put the verse number, but I'll find
Okay.
out, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so material relationships have a beginning and an end, and we should not be too much attached. So here is what Narad Muni is trying to tell Dhritarashtra, so here it says, as long as we are in the material body, we are bound to have these relations, right? So as far as you have these material body, you will still maintain that relationship. And here next is, we should understand that beyond these bodily relationships, we also have spiritual relationships with Krishna in the center, and we are all connected to him, which is Vasudeva Kutumba, and we all are in one family. So this is what is Narad Muni trying to say, that yes, we will come, we will get parted out, but at a spiritual platform, we are one, we have one relationship with the Lord. And this is what, sorry, this is not Dhritarashtra, and this is actually Narad Muni is telling Maharaj Yudhishthira to accept it. Sorry for that. So yes, as long as we maintain material body, we are bound to have relations with others. We should understand that we have a relationship with the others at a spiritual platform, and keeping Krishna in the center, we all are connected. And this is what Narad Muni is saying, that you do not have to lament if things are coming and parting. It's because of the will of the Lord, but at the spiritual platform, we all are connected. Okay. Now, also, there is one interesting point on people come into this situation. So this purport is that you will get into all kind of troubles, you'll have all this. So a very interesting point of law of karma is acting on everyone. And Prabhupada puts that example of a boy with a silver spoon. So here it says a rich man gets his son born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but the child who came as a rich man's son deserves such a place, and therefore is placed there by the will of the Lord. So law of karma is acting on everyone, be it a rich man or a poor man. Prabhupada says you will have your reactions of your karma, and you'll have those reactions, you'll come together for some time, you will stay, and then you'll get parted. Okay. Now, very interesting point is, can the Lord change, or is the Lord able to change the reactions? So anyone who can say, can this really happen if you are actually having reactions? Can the Lord change the reactions? Anyone from the audience want to say yes, no, or how?
Yes.
Okay, yes. What? Who else? Can someone else reply? Can really
Yes,
the Lord change
yes,
the
Prabhu.
reactions?
Yes, it is possible.
It is possible. Okay. So let's see on how this is possible. Okay. So let's look at the soul. We are a soul, right? And as a soul, we are the doer. So can someone tell me what is the responsibility of a soul as a doer? Can someone tell me, what do you think a soul can do?
We need to search for the God.
Okay, so the only thing that the soul can do is desire something, right? As a doer, the soul can only desire, saying, I need this, or I wish to do this, or I can do this. The soul is the only thing as a doer can desire. And that desire is based on something called a law of attraction. You only desire when you get attracted to something, right? And if a soul desires that I need to do something, this is a desire as a doer. That is the only control that he has. He has no other controls, but he can just desire. And this is based on something called a law of attraction. Now, a soul does the desire, right? Who fulfills it? Okay, so the next thing that comes is the material nature or the material energy. And whatever desire the soul has, it is facilitated by the material nature. And this now is based on the law of karma. So if you desire something, who fulfills it? It's the material energy or the material nature. But then he does not do it blindly. He facilitates this based on your karmas that you have. Okay, that's the second step. But again, this material nature, we just saw a shlok which says material nature is under my is under me, right? Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hoti hetunanane kaunteya jagadvi parivartate. So Krishna says this is under my direction. So although you desire something, material nature wants to facilitate it based on the law of karma. There is an Anumanta or the approver who is the approving authority, which is the super soul. So when you desire something, material nature facilitates it, okay, based on the law of karma. But then this is not independent. He has to take an approval from someone. So he is an approving authority, and that approving authority is based on the law of love. Okay. So we see that these two, material nature and super soul, are functioning of the material nature and the approving authority. So whatever you desire, it cannot be fulfilled unless it is the functioning and the approval done by the super soul, Krishna, and giving a permission to the material energy to say, yes, give him. Now, when the soul and a super soul establishes a loving relationship between the two, this is where the magic happens. The first thing that happens is, and this is what it says, is the Lord able to change the reactions? This is what happens. When a soul and a super soul is in a loving relationship, even though one is unable to obtain things due to the law of karma, super soul can still bestow it. This is what it really means. The second thing, again, is super soul can also remove things that are unnecessary and are impeding one's ability to practice bhakti. And this is where the Lord is able to change the reactions. So only when the soul and a super soul comes in a loving relationship is where these two can happen. Any examples from Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam where you say that, see the Lord changes the reaction? Can anyone? Okay, we'll put few of the examples. Durvasa Muni, right, was sent so that the Pandavas could get cursed, right? Now, Lord knew it, but then what did the Lord do? He just overturned everything. Durvasa Muni was unable to reach to their place. They had no grain. It was just that one morsel, one piece of grain that Krishna had, and the Pandavas were saved from Durvasa Muni getting cursed, right? Another example that we see is killing of Jayadratha, right? He had this boon. So Arjuna took a vow that he's going to kill Jayadratha, but then this was only during a specific period in the day. And then what did Krishna do? Okay, it was a daytime, but then Krishna made it as evening is there, and Jayadratha came out and then he killed him. Similarly, there were these 5 arrows with Duryodhan, where Bhishma Pitama said, "I'll kill Pandavas with those 5 arrows." But Krishna exactly knew how to get these 5 arrows from Duryodhan back. So if you see these examples, there are many more like this, where you will see that the Lord was able to change the reaction, and this is only because there is a loving relationship between the soul and the super soul. If there is this relationship that exists, these first 2 things is something that can really happen, and the Lord is able to change the reactions that we have. Okay. Now, the Lord himself, so here Prabhupada also says, although this is happening, Lord is not bound by any law. So Bhagavad Gita 4:14 talks of a good shloka which says, there is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for any fruit of the actions. So if people are so very important part here is, if the Lord can do this, that means he can change, then he is definitely not bound by any of the work or karmas or actions that he does. So the Lord is not bound by any of the laws. If he has the capability to change everything, for sure he can do anything. So this is what is mentioned in 4:14, that there is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for any fruits of the action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reactions of the work. Okay. So let's go to the 44 verse. I think I covered those slides for 44 also. Let's see what 44 says. Okay, so 44 says, Yan manyase dhruvam lokam adurvam vana chobhyaham sarvatha nahi soshaste snehad anyatra mohajat. Can someone read this?
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Can I read?
Yeah.
Translation in purple by Sri Prabhupada. Sri Prabhupada Ji ki Jai. Translation. O King, in all circumstances, whether you consider the soul to be an eternal principle, or the material body to be perishable, or everything to exist in the impersonal absolute truth, or everything to be an inexplicable combination of matter and spirit, feelings of separation are due only to illusory affection and nothing more. Purport. The actual fact is that every living being is an individual part and parcel of the Supreme Being, and his constitutional position is subordinate cooperative service, either in his conditional material existence or in his liberated position of full knowledge and eternity. The living entity is eternally under the control of the Supreme Lord. But those who are not conversant with factual knowledge put forward many speculative propositions about the real position of the living entity. It is admitted, however, by all schools of philosophy that the living being is eternal and that the covering body of the five material elements is perishable and temporary. The eternal living entity transmigrates from one material body to another by the law of karma, and material bodies are perishable by their fundamental structures. Therefore, there is nothing to be lamented in the case of the souls being transferred into another body or the material bodies perishing at a certain stage. There are others also who believe in the merging of the spirit soul in the Supreme Spirit when it is uncovered by the material engagement. And there are others also who do not believe in the existence of spirit or soul, but believe in tangible matter. In our daily experience, we find so many transformations of matter from one form to another, but we do not lament such changing features. In either of the above cases, the force of divine energy is uncheckable. No one has any hand in it, and thus there is no cause of grief. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. So, yeah. So this purport also talks about couple of things that Prabhupada is mentioning, that whether you are an individual part and parcel, you need to serve. So the first statement itself says here that the only position or only thing that you have is you need to serve. Your constitutional position is to serve the Lord. And then later on, Prabhupada mentions that, a body is covered with those five material elements, which are perishable and temporary. And then Prabhupada says the nature of those is that material body will perish as fundamental structure, And as far as the soul is concerned, Prabhupada says, yes, it will transmigrate from one body to the other body. Okay. And Prabhupada says there's nothing to lament in this case, because and this is what we were talking about. The laws of God is what we mentioned earlier, that everything that is happening is a perfect arrangement of the Lord. So there's nothing to really worry. We have this body today. Our soul will pass on from this body to the other body. The body that is made of those 5 material elements is going to perish. These are really the laws that the Lord has made, and there are no flaws to it, and they are not changing, as we said earlier. So there is nothing that we need to lament for. Everything that happens is because of the Lord, and all the rules and the laws that the Lord has made are perfect and will work in a perfect way without any flaws. Okay, so this is the same purport, and Prabhupada is trying to say the same in here. Let's go to 45. Okay, so 45 says, Tasma jahi anga vaikalvyam ajnana kritam atmanaha katham tva anatha kripana varteramste cha mam vina. Can someone read this?
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Translation. Therefore, give up your anxiety due to ignorance of the self. You are now thinking of how they, who are helpless, poor creature, will exist without you. Purport. When we think of our kith and kin as being helpless and dependent on us, it is all due to ignorance. Every living creature is allowed all protection by the order of the Supreme Lord in terms of each one's acquired position in the world. Lord is known as Bhutabhrat, one who gives protection to all living beings. One should discharge his duties only, for no one but the Supreme Lord can give protection to anyone else. This is explained more clearly in the following verse. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Okay. So here is where it mentions that Maharaj Yudhishthir had a mental disparity, right? That means he was in a state where he was really not feeling good about people leaving. So let's see what do we have here for this. So the most important thing here is Maharaj Yudhishthir started thinking himself as a doer. That means in this purport 45, he was thinking, what will happen to my uncle and aunt? Who is going to give them protection? So this is where he started thinking as a doer. So here it is like, I'm everything for my uncle, who will protect him. I am the only one who will protect him. He was thinking this because of the ignorance. And anxiety and mental disparity is caused because of the ignorance. So Yudhishthir Maharaj was thinking that he is the doer and he is the one who is going to protect them against everything. So this 45 verse was typically talking about, yes, he was thinking that he's the only one who can give the protection. However, all this was because of the ignorance that he was having. And this was all because he was in mental disparity and anxiety. And because of the ignorance, he was thinking that he's a doer. So here we should understand two things. One is the Lord is mentioned as Bhut-Bhrit. That means Krishna is the protector of all living beings. So Narad Muni is trying to tell Maharaj Yudhishthir is, you don't worry about it. If your uncle and aunt have left, it is not you that they will get protected. It is the Lord who gives. So here the Lord is mentioned as Bhut-Bhrit. Living entities cannot protect other living entities. It is only the Lord who can provide the protection. So here it is Krishna who is giving protection to all the living beings. This is what is mentioned as Bhut-Bhrit. Also, in one of the 64 qualities of the Lord, one of the qualities of the Lord is called Sharnagat Palaka. This is one of the qualities of the Lord, that he is protector of the surrendered souls. So here Krishna is the protector of all the surrendered souls. And this is his habit. This is by nature, he does this. Krishna gives protection even to his enemies, right? And it is also mentioned that Krishna is sometimes compared to the moon, which does not hesitate to distribute its soothing rays even onto the houses of Chandalas and other untouchables. So Krishna is protecting everyone, be it a living being or be it a surrendered souls. Krishna is giving protection to all. And Narad Muni is trying to tell Maharaj Yudhishthira that you do not worry about the protection. It's Krishna who's going to give the protection to them. And for the surrendered soul, there are many examples that we see that we have where Krishna protects Dhruv Maharaj, and then you have so many other examples which are there, which are surrendered souls whom Krishna gave the protection, right? So Krishna is mentioned here as Bhutprat and Sharanagat Palka. He will take care of this. And this is what Krishna is telling, that don't worry about it. Krishna will protect everything. And in all the situations, they would be protected. And this comes to the last part of a very nice shloka that I would want to end with. And this is from Ishopanishad, the first invocation mantra. It's very good. It says, Om Purnamadaham Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Evavashishyate. So the complete whole or the supreme absolute truth is the complete personality of Godhead. I'll read the purport. It says, the personality of Godhead is perfect and complete. And because he is complete perfect, all emanations from him, such as his phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself, because he is complete whole. Even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. So this is a very important shloka. So all that we read today is all about the Lord. He is complete in himself. All that he creates is complete. There is no imperfection in any of the laws that he creates. Whatever is happening because of the will of the Lord. And then finally, the only protection that we are going to get is from the Lord. So this is the complete whole. This is the complete personality of the Godhead that summarizes that Lord is everything and he is complete as a supreme absolute truth. With that, I end. Thank you so much. I think this was my last slide, I'm assuming. Yeah. Yes.
Excellent class, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Wonderful. Anybody has any question?
Prabhu, when we were discussing the qualities of Narad as a pure devotee of Lord, I had read in the Bhagavatam also that he served those munis and ate their remnants, which made him the. I don't know whether it was.
He did that. So it should be the 1-5 only as remnants also. Yes, he ate their prasadam for sure. So it should be in that 1-5 chapter. I just took 3 verses, but yes, while serving them, he also ate their Mahaprasad. And then, his journey, he went out and then he did all his devotional service. And then later on in the next birth, he was awarded this form of form that he has right now as Narad Muni. So yes, he ate the remnants and Mahaprasad of those sages as well. Yeah, true.
That was verse number 25 of 5th chapter.
Okay, 5th chapter. Okay, yeah, it should be there also. Anyone else has any questions?
Prabhuji, one small doubt I had. You mentioned that the soul basically desires, or that means it has certain desires then, right?
Yes, the soul has desires for sure. And that's the only thing that is under his control. So a soul can only desire. That's it. Now,
So, but the desire again, is it not something is by the Supreme Lord, that what this soul should get or what this soul should not get?
no, so see, what happens is, as a soul, you are free to desire anything. So there the Lord doesn't have any restrictions. Lord does not put a restriction that when you do a desire, you only desire spiritual things. No, he has not. I mean, there is a full journey where the Lord doesn't want you to force anything, but then he has kept this free will to us, saying that you do whatever you want, or you do as you desire. So that free will that the Lord has given does not bound us to saying that no, desire is only limited to something, or the Lord controls that desire. No.
Because my confusion is in terms of the soul versus our body, right? See, I thought the body is the one which desires, and we actually move away
No.
from our ultimate goal.
No, not the body,
Yeah.
because if you look at the body
Means mind and the other materialistic layers on top of the soul.
Yeah, so soul is the at the top. So you have senses, mind, intelligence, and above this is the soul. If you look at the structure, you have senses, then you have mind, you have intelligence, and above intelligence is the soul.
Yeah. So is it that, see, any desire for doing good or doing bad, is it coming from the soul, or is it?
It is from the soul. It is from the soul. It has nothing to do with the body is material. So those 5 elements that Prabhupada was talking about was all the material elements. But if you look at the subtle part of the soul, which is mind, ego, intelligence, and the soul, they are very subtle. And whatever desire happens, it has nothing to do with the body. It is purely based on the soul's desire. Yes, of course. Then the intelligence comes into. So let's look at an example. For example, you are seeing something. So that is your senses, right? And now to get attracted towards those is then another level where the intelligence comes in, whether the intelligence tells you that, okay, whether I should take it, I should leave it, is it good for me, it is not good for me. But above the intelligence is the soul. So ultimately that desire, what was there, was by the soul to say, I need something. So it's at the level of the soul. But yes, there are these intermediate things that are playing a part, which is senses and intelligence, which is again guided by the soul.
Prabhu, in 3.42, that structure has been given. That is dull matter, the body, then the senses, then the mind, then the intelligence, and then the soul.
Yeah, then the soul. Yes.
एक पॉइंट ऐड करूं मैं इसमें,
yes, yes.
So Uday Prabhu, these desires do exist with the soul even when it was in the spiritual world. So which was actually the sole reason why we have fallen into the material world. So because we desired to enjoy at that point of time, and that desire meaning transported us into the material world. Of course, the mechanism was done by Krishna, but had we not had that desire to enjoy without Krishna, we would not be in material world. So when we were in the spiritual world, we did not have this subtle body of mind, intelligence, and false ego, but we had desires with us at that time. So desires are not the byproduct of the subtle body alone. It is there with the soul even before as well. And if these desires were not there, as Prabhuji rightly mentioned, then the question of free will would not come at all. So this free will gives you that option. Do you want A or do you want B? You should be intelligent enough to choose the right one. And if you choose something which is other than Krishna or related to Krishna, then we obviously become the recipient of the respective results also. So because that free will is there, that is where the question of voluntary love comes in picture. So as Prabhuji mentioned, Krishna, meaning like even in material relationship also, you can't keep a gun on somebody's head and said you have to love me. So the love is basically voluntary. Similarly, Krishna wants us to love him voluntarily. If he were to apply some kind of force, mechanical or whatever kind of force, then that love is not voluntary, right? Then it is basically we are mechanical entities and serving Krishna like robots. So that is where the free will comes into picture, where we are supposed to voluntarily love Krishna. And if this free will and if desires were not there, then the question of free will would not come, which happened with us even before we came into the material world. Is that
My contradiction in the
we were
mind?
spiritual souls. I mean, when
My
we were
only
spiritual-
contradiction in the mind is basically our intelligence, which is a form of the material part, right? Intelligence doesn't get carried forward with the soul, is what my understanding is, if I'm right. So intelligence is something which we developed in the material world, right?
correct? Developed meaning we, as we enter into the material world,
We are given some intelligence.
yes, the subtle body is awarded to us.
Yeah, so that but particular intelligence is making a decision means I think somewhere I am not able to get that understanding right, because soul, then what keeps us to say that this is right and wrong?
the mind.
Again, it is dependent on the intelligence which we are developing.
So we have spiritual intelligence also. So when we are in the spiritual world, we have spiritual intelligence, but when we enter into this material world, we are awarded this subtle body which contains the material intelligence. So if we did not use our spiritual intelligence in the right manner, then obviously we will have to come to the material world, wherein we will get this material intelligence. I'm not sure whether that answers.
No, I am a little, I don't know if everybody is clear, sorry. This is somehow I am not able to get the fact that, like, how do I follow something when I have to develop it and follow it? I can keep going wrong, right?
No, I am also sorry. I'm not clear with the question. If you don't mind elaborating it.
No, my elaboration, my query is simple. Like, I got this body, okay? Now, there is a path to be followed, or there is a thing to be achieved, and that is there in the soul. Like doing wrong things and doing bad things, or doing something not right and not correctly, is happening by the material world, right?
Correct.
So then now we have to train the material body to go to something, and that something is not there within me. Then I am even if the soul starts desiring to do wrong things.
Okay, the soul starts desiring wrong things is not the product of the material body alone. Why? Because this soul, he carries forward his karma and his desires from his previous life into the current life, which actually becomes the cause of his further incorrect desires. And then if you trace it back to the, let's say, the second life caused incorrect desires in the third life, and the first life caused incorrect desires in the second life. So if you reach to the first life, then the obvious question will be, where did I get that incorrect desire? So that is when we were in the spiritual world. So that is the path of traverse. But the path of going back is basically developing the spiritual intelligence via the scriptures and guru and all that mechanism. So we may not be in the best position to reach to the best possible level of spiritual intelligence right now, but we are at least on the right track. So gradually, after our impurities are removed, the material impurities, then we would be in a better position to understand the spiritual knowledge. And that is where the super soul also comes into picture.
Yes. So as Prabhu mentioned that the desires from the previous life is carried to this life. And there is this soul and super soul. So super soul watches everything that a soul does. So super soul is just an observer. So he sees on everything that you do. And those desires which are there from the previous life are transferred to this life. And this is where Prabhu said that when you come to this life, you may be inclined to certain good or bad things. And that's not because of the current life, but because you had them as with you from the previous life, which is inclining more to do good or to do bad things. But then you always have again a free will to select what is right and wrong, and you can change your path accordingly.
I'm
Okay.
What do you think?
Maybe I do some little more reading of this and then get back to you.
Okay, I'll have I will speak maybe after some time. We can discuss further detail.
Hare Krishna,
Yeah.
Prabhu. Can I say something?
Yes, Hare Krishna. Yes, Mataji.
Yeah, Prabhuji, I've also heard that from in a class that if the soul leaves, the body cannot think or cannot even desire anything. So when the soul is there, only then the body is a doer of what we are desiring. Our soul is desiring. So if the soul is not there, the body itself cannot desire anything or cannot even do anything.
No, it cannot. Correct, Mataji. So when the soul leaves the body, you think it is just a body with which is made of chemicals. There's nothing there.
That the body cannot desire anything.
No, cannot. Yeah.
And the reason for that is the subtle body travels along with the soul into the new body.
Mm.
And the function of these thoughts, the thinking, feeling, willing, which Prabhupada mentions, is the meaning is possible because of the subtle body and the soul. So when that itself does not exist in the material body, this thinking cannot happen. Thoughts are not possible.
And one more thing I heard, Prabhuji, that the soul needs a body to work. The soul itself cannot work. So the soul needs a body to work in this material world. But when we go to spiritual world, we don't need a body. The soul itself works there, isn't it? Hare Krishna.
I will have to check this, Mataji. I mean, you are correct. In the spiritual world, we are all souls. But in relation to the body, I'll have to really check. So, Bal Prabhu, you have any ideas on what Mataji said?
Yeah. So basically, Mataji, when we come out of the material world, we get back our original spiritual body. So we have a spiritual body there as well.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
And how we can understand this is when we go to hell. Okay, so so when we go to hell, the hellish punishments are supposed to be suffered. Now, who goes to hell? The Atma, right? The material body remains here. So when the Atma goes to the hell, okay, as per what is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita verses 2.11 till 2.30, Atma cannot be troubled in absolutely any form. In such a scenario, the Atma cannot undergo any punishment at all.
Yes.
No punishment will get. So to ensure that the bodily punishments are
suffers.
Yeah. So the a body which is equivalent or basically capable of accepting punishments in those environment and those conditions is awarded to that person. That person has to suffer that, and then when his suffering is complete, then he exits that material body and goes to another planet or comes to Earth or this Earth or whichever it is, and continues the suffering or continues the journey. So similarly, when we go to the spiritual world, we obtain our spiritual body.
Spiritual body. And that body does not sort of get killed because we are getting punished, and we still need to get all that pain that is there. So with that pain that you get in the hellish planets, the body doesn't sort of die. You still feel those pains within that spiritual body, and then you leave that, as Prabhu mentioned.
Thank you.
Just
Prabhuji. Thank you.
one point, Dhanishta, my wife, added just now. So she said that there are these 4 types of muktis, right? Sayujya, Sarupya, Salupya,
Yes.
and all that. So Sarupya is one form of mukti where you get the form which Vishnu also has. So which
Similar form.
similar form. So which means you get that spiritual body back which resembles Vishnu. That way.
In the spiritual world, yes, correct.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you
Okay,
so
Hare
much,
Krishna.
Prabhu. Thank you very much. Thank you all
Prabhu.
for attending.
Thank you.
We'll meet next week. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.